we go. Sometimes I push it, and it like pushes twice. All right, let's do this. Okay. All right, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Have attention, please. All quiet, please. Thank you. Go ahead and open up your notes. Turn to the last section. Yeah, whoa, that fell off. The last section of our notes on the, where do you have that? Back of page 2, the bottom section. Asia awakens to changed reality. The Europeans are coming. Yeah, so we're going to look at situation of Asia, paying particular attention to Japan and China. Very big, important parts of the world. We actually covered them early on because, do you remember which did the Mongols conquer? Japan and or China? You got 3 choices. Japan, China, or both. What do you think? Did the Mongols conquer China? Did they conquer Japan? No, they didn't. They didn't conquer Japan. They weren't able to get to Japan. It's okay. You're like, whatever. Did the Mongols hang on to any of those territories? No. So we're going to take a look at this. And, of course, when the Mongols did have control, they're going to be able to do lots of trading across from Japan, particularly from China, to areas in Europe. And the Europeans are like, yay, we really love those Chinese items, and we're going to go to great lengths in order to get them. And then when the Mongol Empire, the trading empire, had broken apart, and you couldn't just trade, move across the Silk Road cheaply. Now you had to pay tariffs, then you had to pay security. Who was the guy in 1492 that sailed the ocean blue that figured out a way to get to? Not actually Asia, but to the Americas. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And which was the country that figured out the way to get around from Europe, around the southern tip of Africa, over to Asia? European country. It's not Spain. It was Portugal. Yep. Okay. So we're going to take a look at Asia as we go through here. And in fact, let's start with the first. Let's get with the images here. Whoop, that's the wrong one. That's for government. Isn't that weird? Some people in Oregon actually want to create, leave Oregon, just have little small Oregon here, and have Greater Idaho, which would make Idaho like a Pacific Coast state. I don't think it's going to happen, but it's kind of like weird. Has there ever been like a state that got chopped up? Yeah, Virginia did. Yeah, during the Civil War, they created West Virginia, Mountain Home, right? So anyway, yeah, that's not the one. That's like next year stuff. Here we go. This is the one we want. So reminder to you, we're going to be continuing on with the notes today. We may finish up. I don't know. We'll actually see. And then next time you guys come back here on Tuesday, part of the class will be review. 4, test on Thursday next week. Week after. What do you have to do the week after as far as school is concerned? Nothing. Nothing. You don't have to actually come to school. That's true because we've got spring break. Are you going to be working on anything in my class? What? Oh, how's that coming? How many of you guys have watched their films? How many of you guys have got some research done already? That would be everybody because you did your preliminary stuff. So, yeah, that's going to be on the Friday the 9th, okay? And we'll be getting into our new unit then when you come back after the break, focusing on events leading to and around the American Revolution. We'll also look at independence movements in the Americas. They're going to be going from being controlled by Europeans to being in control mostly of themselves. Okay? I also put quite a few video clips. I may actually show one of them in here, but I want you to watch those because I don't see you every day. Okay? I only see you twice a week, 45 minutes. After the break, I'll see you twice a week for 90 minutes each time. So videos relating to things that we would otherwise show in here, watch those. Okay? Those are the like little 10-minute snippet things and so forth that will elaborate on various different aspects. Like the one, it's really sad, the one where they do a ceremony in Brazil where they like launch this little boat back to Africa as kind of symbolic of the opposite journey that was taken many, many years before when their ancestors were taken from freedom situations in Africa and then sold as slaves in Brazil. Not very nice there. Okay? So, shall we get into this? Asia, Asia, Asia. It's massive, it's big, it's a very big part of the old world. You've got very important civilizations going on in Asia for a long, long time. During this time period, we have Asia, as I basically said right here, Asia awakening to a changed reality. Europeans are coming. Write this down. Look at this map. This is crazy. This is the global trade network. This is what you have now in the world. With some exceptions, now we've got a canal there, so you don't have to unload your stuff. You've got a canal actually right there. Got a canal in Panama and so forth, but there's things going on all over the world. Americas are connected intricately into a worldwide trade network. You want to write down what these things are? The trade is moving by wind. Monsoon winds, write that down. The monsoon winds, you know which way the prevailing winds go? Best to catch the prevailing winds when they're behind you so they can point you easily in the direction that you want to go. Okay? So you're going to have people trading this way, that way, and so forth. You've got people coming from Europe trading to Africa, to the Americas, back over to Asia. All of this is going to be interconnected. So let's see if you can figure this out. What are going to be some of the key items that will be traded from certain areas? Here's an easy one. China. Want to volunteer? What are two of the main trade items coming out of China? Go for it. Silk. Very good. Silk. That was a good one. Okay? And silk has been a very, very prominent trade item going for many, many, many years. You want to go for another one? You sure? You don't want to go for another one on China? China? Have you got the clue yet? Yes? You're just repeating the name of the place that I said. Are you? Are you just repeating the name of the... I'm going to throw something at you. I think I might throw a plate or a cup or a bowl. What's another name for that China that you're referring to? Plates, yeah. Porcelain, yeah. China. I mean, that's what we call it. China. China comes from China. Fine porcelain goods. And there's various different areas. Korea, also Japan, and others are also very famous for their porcelain. Okay? Beautiful, fine china. Very good. All right. How about India? India. Anybody want to give it a shot for there? India, what would be some items that might come out of India? Go for it. Spices, very good. You can write that down. Spices is very good. There's another item, and it can be a raw product, or you can finish it. You know what I mean by finish it? Right? You take the raw product, you finish it into something. I mean, it's like China. What's the raw product that makes China? And don't say dirt, although that's not too far off. Now, how do you make China? What do you make China from? You make China porcelain from what? Clay, exactly. Yeah, hello. Yeah, just down the hall. I mean, we got the kiln in there. You take the clay, you know, do a little thing, and then heat it, and, you know, you got it. Okay? So, do you have an idea of what either raw product or the finished product from India? Molasses? No, molasses is going to be like something you're going to get from sugar. No, I'll give you a clue. I'll tell you what one of the things is that is going to be manufactured in India. In fact, let me go right over here to the Indian flag. The Indian flag, orange, white, green. In the middle is a blue spinning wheel, which you use to take the raw product from India and make it into a finished product. What's that? Wool. Not wool. Not wool. Wool is going to come off. Where do you get wool from? Don't say wool plants, because wool doesn't grow on plants. You get it from sheep. So you could get wool from places like Britain, Ireland, and so forth. India, you don't have too much wool being produced there, I don't think. But it's something, you can spin wool. But what is another thing that you can spin to make fabrics? Cotton. Write it down. Cotton. Okay? And in fact, do you like cotton? What do you prefer? How many of you guys prefer wearing cotton over wool? How many of you guys prefer wearing wool over cotton? When would you wear more cotton? Summertime, wintertime? What? Summertime? Why? Because it's cool, right? Yeah, anyway, cotton. Pajamas actually was invented by Indians. Yeah, way to go, PJs. Okay, so there's various different cotton textiles. India will come up and be very important as far as the cotton trade. Will they be growing cotton in other parts of the world? Heck yeah, we're going to be growing a lot of it in the deep south in the United States of America. That's going to be a very important part of the economy. But India has a lot of cotton growing there. Okay, so cotton and spices, very good. How about, somebody want to give it a try? Indonesia or the Dutch East Indies. What are going to be some of the things that are coming out of there? Going to give it a shot? I'll give you a clue. Sometimes the Dutch East Indies are referred to as the Spice Islands. Wonder why they would call them that. What are you going to get from the Spice Islands? Very good, spices. Yeah, very good. Like nutmegs and all kinds of cloves and various different things that you can grow in that kind of tropical climate. Spices. Very, very good. Why do you need spice? Why do you need spices? Do you like spicy stuff? How many of you guys like spicy food? You like spicy food for the sake of it? How many of you guys are like not really into like really hot, spicy stuff? I mean, I like cinnamon. I mean, that's cool, but not too much. But can somebody raise your hand and tell me, why were spices so important for food that consumption back in those days? Yes? Yeah, flavor. And sometimes you needed that flavor because sometimes like the meat or some of the stuff was a little rancid, you know? Because, you know, somebody was always unplugging the refrigerator, so like the meat was, you didn't have the same kind of things that you could use to preserve some of those foods, including meat. So spices actually help quite a bit for food preservation and also just kind of to overcome, you know, whatever else it was that you were smelling. Does that make sense? Okay, so spice is going to be very important. Let's talk about some other ones. From the Middle East. This one's a little trickier. From the Middle Eastern area, Persia and the Arabian areas. Actually, some of you guys can get this one. Persia is in the Middle East. What is something that you could have, and if you got this from Persia, a finished product, you could put it on the wall if you really didn't want it to get messed up, or you could put it on the floor. Yep. Yeah, rugs, carpets, and so forth. Persian carpets are very, very, very valuable, even still today. Okay? Very good. Fine glass products as well from the Middle East. Okay? And of course, you're loading these all up. Caravels? It's in the thing. What the heck is a caravel? I actually defined this before. What do you have? What is a caravel? I'll give you a clue. You put a sail on it, and it catches the wind, and it moves through the water with a lot of cargo. What is it? It's a boat. Right. It is a cargo ship. Okay? So European caravels going here, there, everywhere. So, here's an interesting question, and this is a little bit harder. Actually, this one's easy. We'll get to the hard one later. From Africa, what items are being sold from Africa in this international market? Were you paying attention in the last unit, or the last part of the unit? And it got stopped by William Wilberforce and the British Parliament. Slavery, exactly. And ivory, but slavery was a big, big component of it. That was a huge component of it. You had, particularly coming along the west coast of Africa, slave markets, and they were selling the slaves primarily to the Americas, Caribbean, South America, and some to the southern part of North America. Okay, very good. All right, now, Europe. Write this down. Europe. Okay, we got all the other ones written down. What are the Europeans going to contribute to this international market? I mean, is there something that the Europeans have that everyone's like, oh, we got to get that? Yeah. There'll be some of that, manufactured goods, guns, and so forth. That's part of it. Okay? You don't want to give too many guns, sell too many guns to various different peoples because they could turn those guns against you. Okay? But is there anything that like Europe is really manufacturing at that time that everyone's like, oh, I got to have that? I mean, everyone's like, the Europeans are like, oh, I got to have Chinese silk and porcelain and gold and spices and this and that and so forth. I mean, the write this down. The Europeans are getting a lot of stuff from all over the world. And I mean, they're bringing it in. Europe is dominant in this time period. They will become even more dominant. So what do the Europeans have? What do the Europeans have to get Chinese silk and porcelain? Here's a European showing up with a boat in China, and I'm like, I want to get some silk, I want to get some thing, I want to get this, I want to get this. What am I going to give to you? You're the Chinese salesperson. What do you want from Europe? Is there anything European that, I mean, yeah, maybe some guns and so forth, but is there anything European you're like, oh, I got to have that European thing? And don't say Mercedes-Benz or anything like that. That's later, okay? Anything? Nothing? Nothing jumping out to you? All right, here's an idea. Write this down. A tapestry. Ooh, a tapestry. Woo, that's pretty nice. Like a woven thing you can hang up on your wall. And then the Chinese merchant's like, yeah, we got enough tapestries. There's really nothing else that I want. I want some good, cold, hard, yes? Books. There we go. No, they're not going to go for the books so much. I know, exactly. I'm like, come on, what's the problem? What? Money? Write it down, money. Silver and gold. The Chinese will be like, yeah, if you got a bunch of silver, we'll take that. We have value for silver. We have value for gold. And the Europeans are like, well, I really hate to part with it, but you know what? I really like that stuff you got. This is a fascinating thing. Check this out. Because one of the things that the Europeans are going to have during this time period is they're going to have stuff from other places that they will use in order to get, you know, Chinese silks, Chinese porcelain, and these Middle Eastern goods and other kinds of stuff. Where are they getting all that silver? Is it coming out of Europe? No. Well, then where are the Europeans getting it? I'll give you a clue. It's a place they have increasing control over. We've been talking about it in this unit. What have they gained control over? And they have taken out of the ground using African slaves and native indigenous slaves, practically, to get out of the ground gold and silver to put on boats to take over to China and other places to buy stuff. Exactly, the Americas. Very good. The Americas. This is where the Americas fit into this trade network thing. And it's fascinating because if you missed any part of that, would you get all that gold and silver out of the Americas, and to the extent that they did, without slavery? Not as much. Yeah, it's kind of messed up because without the slavery part, it's going to tend to slow things down a bit. Eventually you'll get people, you know, individuals mining gold and silver themselves. And put this down, cash crops. The Europeans in their estates, plantations in the Americas are going to grow cash crops. We talked about them before. What's a good cash crop that they could grow in the Americas? You don't actually grow cash. You grow something, and then you harvest it, and you take it, put it on boats, and sell it elsewhere. What's that? Potatoes, not so much. Again, potatoes, you don't, once you transfer potatoes, then they kind of like reproduce themselves in whatever country they're in. But it's something that you can grow in the Caribbean, but you can't really grow it in like Europe. Tobacco is one. That's a good one. Okay, anything else? I'll give you a clue. This came up in the movie Amazing Grace, and they were talking about the harsh conditions for the slaves who were growing these things and refining them. Remember that? Sugar, yeah, sugar cane, very good. You can refine it into molasses, which is kind of nice, or you can refine it even further into like rum, okay? So, sugar is a cash crop, tobacco, coffee, so forth. All right, very good. Now, among the different countries, Portugal, there's your next bullet point, okay? Portugal is going to establish some control, because if you can get control of certain areas, they will establish control right here. You can't really see it there, but Ormuz in Persia. So they established a little bit of a foothold. You don't necessarily have to take over the whole thing of Persia to establish a very valuable port control. So they got Ormuz. They will also have Goa in India, that's an interesting thing. Because we'll see Britain and France fighting over India, fighting over for control of India. But both of them are going to go, oh, whatever, you got Goa, Portugal, okay, you can still have that. So it's an important trading control area that the Portuguese have. And then the Portuguese will have, for a while, Malacca in what is now Indonesia, and the Spice Islands there. Okay? So Portugal is going to have that. Remember, we saw Portugal was sort of, when we did that competition thing with you guys, Portugal was the first one out of the gate. We're the first ones to figure out how to get around the southern tip of Africa and to gain control of some of those areas and trade routes. But, put this down, they're going to lose out. Sorry, Portugal. You're going to lose out to later European countries like the Dutch and the British. Okay? In fact, let's talk about the Dutch next. The Dutch from the Netherlands. They are going to be gaining some control right over here, the same place the Portuguese wanted to have control. The Dutch are going to do it much more effectively. At a place called Batavia on the island of Java, which is one of the islands in the area now known as Indonesia. In the 1600s, they're going to gain some control over that and introduce a new crop into Java. They're going to start growing it and selling it all over the place. Exactly, that's exactly what it is. Very good. Coffee, right? Have you ever heard of like a cup of Java? Do they even still have the coffee shops in Moxie Java? There used to be a bunch of those around this area. You guys seen a Moxie Java? Have you seen, this will help you to remember, what is one of the, and don't say Starbucks because that's not the answer, but what is one of the popular coffee places that has a connection to this idea that the Netherlands gains control over that area? Exactly, Dutch Bros. If you can remember Dutch Bros, then you can remember who is going to be dominant in the coffee production, certainly coming out of that area of the world, the Dutch East Indies. And Java is going to be one of those places where a lot of that is going to be produced. Ceylon, it's really hard to see this. It's kind of like the teardrop off of India. The Dutch will gain control of that. Today it's known as Sri Lanka. Let me see if we got the flag over here for here it is. There's Sri Lanka. Okay? The Dutch will have control over that area just off the coast of India. Okay? Britain. We know Britain's going to be a big deal with their big navy and so forth. They're going to focus in particular on gaining control of port facilities in India, Calcutta, on the eastern part, Madras on the coast, and then Bombay also on the coast, which today is Mumbai. Their rival is the French. We've actually already seen this, so there's nothing really new here. Who wins ultimately between the British and the French in India? Becca. What's your final answer? Really? Why? Do the British have a better navy than the French? Yeah, they do. And that is going to help them quite a bit in that rivalry. Of course, the big loser there is the Mughal Empire. But they kind of messed it up already because they're like, hey, we're the Mughal Empire. You have to be Muslim. They didn't listen to the tolerant Akbar, who earlier had said, hey, whatever, you could be Hindu and so forth. They went down the wrong path and ultimately lost support of the people there. And the British will ultimately dominate there. Spain. In Asia, they actually have a part. I mean, Spain's got tons of control over areas in the Americas. But in Asia, they have the Philippines, the Philippine Islands. And it's very interesting because the Philippine Islands are like, oh, there's this bunch of islands, they're Philippine, and they're all the same. Are all Philippine islands, Keith, the same?
No.
No, they're not. What's the difference?
Size-wise?
Okay, size-wise, some of them are bigger and some of them are smaller. Some are in the north and some are in the south. Do you know anything else about sort of like the religious makeup of the islands?
Well, like, some are probably different than others.
This is true. They are different. And you're like, what's the difference are you talking about? In the southern part of the Philippines, it's more Muslim. Okay? And write that down. It's more Muslim. You're like, okay, well, that's interesting. So even when the Spanish come to the Philippines and they gain control over it, a lot of the Filipinos particularly in the north around Manila. Many of them learn to speak Spanish. Many of them will be converted to, what's the main religion for the Spanish? Oh, thank you very much, Catholic. But in the southern part of the Philippines, they're not going to be as into it. So they'll actually remain, there's going to be that kind of separation while the Spanish are control. Even today in the Philippines, in the southern part, they're not always excited about what the northern part of the Philippines. So write that down, okay? And in fact, write this down as well. Spanish areas, Portuguese areas, in spite of the movie The Mission, where it looked like they really weren't cool about Jesuit missions and missionaries, put this down. In Spanish and Portuguese areas, particularly in the early stages, they did encourage missionaries. They did encourage Catholic missionaries to come over. And so you'll actually see a lot of people in those areas, particularly in the Americas, converting to the Catholic faith. What about the Dutch and the British and the French? Did they encourage missionaries to go into their areas? Not so much. The British and the Dutch, predominantly Protestant. The French, who knows what the French are? They're Catholic, but you've got an interesting mix there. So you're not going to have that quite as much. Not as much of encouragement in as far as Protestants. But among the Spanish and Portuguese, you will have on many of those ships, you're going to have, what was that group of people? What kind of missionaries? Dominicans, Franciscans? What were the ones that like to go along and help convert people to Catholicism? Starts with a J. Jesuits, very good. Yeah, Jesuits, yeah. So we're going to see a lot of Jesuits showing up as well. And they're going to be actually an interesting component part when we look now at China and Japan. First, China. You guys interested in Chinese history? China. There it is. China. It's massive. It's huge. Its history goes way back. It's one of the great early civilizations. Wow, what did they invent? Printing, navigation, right? I mean, they're just like super, super advanced. China's history, here's like U.S. history. Up, 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 up. In your lifetime, are we going to continue going up, 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 up? Oh, you're like, I hope so, Mr. Hansen, because it really is not much fun in history to be living in a country that's going down. China's history, if you look at it over a long period of time, ups and downs and ups and downs and ups and downs. The Mongols, was that great for Chinese history? No, because they got conquered by outside people. Okay? And in fact, go ahead and write this guy down. Xu Zhuang Zheng. Zhu Huan Zheng. I'm not doing that very well. Sometimes people call him Hong Wu. Who is this guy? He is the guy who helps to organize the Chinese military defeat of who? Bella. Who? Who was the group of people that we talked about at the very beginning of this course that came in and conquered China? Exactly, very good, the Mongols. And we've seen this as we've gone through. So the Mongols are thrown off, and Hong Wu is going to be the founder of the Ming dynasty. There's a lot of dynasties in Chinese history. The Ming is a very important dynasty in Chinese history. They are going to go, woo! It's great to have the Chinese in charge of China again. Let's make China great again using the ways that we have of the past. Get those Mongols out of here. Good grief. Although it was nice because the Mongols did have that trade and so forth. But whatever, China for the Chinese. And they will have a very dynamic dynasty that's going to run for I think I got that in there for just under 300 years. Right? 300 years of the Ming dynasty. One thing that they're going to do in the Ming dynasty, because I've been there. I've been there during that time period. Whoops, let's skip that. Let's go to this map. Just north of Beijing, or Peking, whatever you want to have, is a defensive barrier. Raise your hand if you can tell me the defensive barrier that was built a long, long time ago to keep those marauding hordes from the north from coming over. Very good, the Great Wall of China. Write this down. The Great Wall of China will be improved during the Ming Dynasty. They'll fix it up some as a defensive barrier to attacks from the north, because that's where the Mongols came from. The Huns earlier had come from there. And yes, there will be another dynasty that will also come from the north. One of the things, though, that the Ming dynasty is going to do, whoops, is they're going to reestablish the way they did things before. Like scholar gentry. You got to go to school. You got to study your stuff. If you study your stuff and you do real well, we got a job for you in the government. It's like a gentry position. It's almost like a noble position, but it's not just inherited. Although if your dad is a scholar working for the government, you're probably going to be in a good position to be able to learn what you need to learn to pass the test. But you still have to pass the tests. All right? It's not just going to be a handout. So who's going to have an opportunity to be a scholar, to be part of the Chinese government? None of you guys, just you guys. Wow, that was brutal. Are these guys smarter than you? What do they have that's different from you? They're boys. You like that? You're like, yeah, China, boys, they get to be in charge. Well, what about Mulan, right? Isn't she a good fighter? Yeah, can she be in the military? Only in the stories, and actually that is based in part on a true story. But the women, it's very interesting, particularly among the elite. Traditional Chinese roles for women, Mulan is actually pretty true about this. Traditional Chinese roles for women, particularly among like the elite, is wife. And if you've got a really nice, expensive household and so forth, you have servants do the work. Well, what do? You can't be a scholar gentry. You're not expected to use your brains and study like the men to become part of the government. What do? You raise kids, and even, if you're wealthy enough and so forth, you can have servants help to raise the kids. What is your day? What does your daily life consist of? If you are among, like, the aristocratic families of China, what are you doing? Like painting your face? Yeah. Walking around the house in really nice clothes? Yeah. Barking out orders to your servants? Yeah. You guys are working for the government because, like, you passed your exams, right? You passed your exams. You're part of the scholar gentry. Well, one of the things that they want to do is they really like kind of the way things are for women. And one of the things they like about women in traditional China is they don't want women to be like running around. None of these Mongol women. Mongol women, they get on horses and ride. Does that sound like fun? A role for a woman, like get on horses and ride. The guys can ride in China and so forth, but the Chinese women, particularly among the aristocrats, if you're a peasant girl, you're out in the fields working with the peasant guys and so forth. It sucks to be a peasant. But if you're among the aristocratic levels, your role as a female is pretty identified early on. And that's where if they were to do like a really dark version of Mulan, they would stress a little bit more that one scene where they're trying to get her all like presentable and everything so that she can find a husband. Because that's what the expectation is. You become a wonderful, presentable female figure so that you can become a wife and a mother, and then you're going to be chosen for that purpose. Don't bother studying things and so forth like that. Very, very male-dominated. And in fact, to make sure you have that dainty, dainty female walk, instead of that, long gaits kind of thing. We don't want you to walk with long stride as a female among the elite. You have to be like, we want you to have little feet. Y'all's feet are too big. I don't know, what size is that? 7. Anybody guys got feet smaller than 7? My gosh, that's just way too big for a Chinese girl, this is what they would say. And of course, here's the deal. Are your feet going to get much bigger? Well, I don't think at this point. Most of you guys are kind of grown. What size you got? 10 and a half? Anybody got bigger than 10 and a half? I wear size 13 because they're more comfortable. I could fit into a 12, but that's not that comfortable. Well, they want you to have small feet. But your feet are going to be as big as your feet are, right? So if the preferred thing is to have small feet, how do you make small feet when you're born to have big feet? Yeah, it's called foot binding. I mean, what the heck is that? What are they going to like chop off party fat? No, that's barbaric. That's horrific. You're not going to chop off the foot. No, we're going to bind them tightly when you're a little teeny tiny girl. We're going to bind them tightly so that your feet will not grow out. They'll grow under. This is a woman, an older woman, who has had her foot bound from the early stages. Is that painful to look at? It should be. There's the big toe. What are these things? Those are her other toes that have been bound from early stages. You don't take, once you bind the feet, you kept that binding on so the feet don't grow. Is a cultural fashion statement that is traditional Chinese, and foot binding was practiced throughout the Ming dynasty, throughout much of Chinese history, and even here today, you have a photograph of a woman who was a young girl in China, probably in the early 19th century, or 1900s, they were still practicing that. Do they still do that in China today? No, they don't do that. No, that's probably one of the only great things that the Chinese communists have done in China. Not too many great things, but one of them is they're like, hey, let's not do that foot binding thing anymore. Let's move past that. But it's not like in modern America, are there things that people will do for fashion, culture, expectations that involve like pain or surgery or whatever? Are you going to color your hair when you're older? You can color it now. I mean, that's not painful. That's just sort of fashion. How about having your eyebrows plucked? That's not too bad, is it? Really? How about having Botox? Anybody guys going to get Botox? Will you guys show up for your 30th high school reunion? Guys, if you don't have like hairlines where they are right now and they kind of receded a little bit back, are you cool with bald? Or are you going to weave it in? Like, I don't know, should they weave it in? What about if their hair color is all turned gray, naturally gray? Should they like get a bottle in there and like color it up so that they look younger? I mean, any of you guys plan over the next year on walking on shoes where you're literally like walking on the balls of your toes? Is that fashionable? Would you do that? You guys are all wearing comfortable shoes right now. I mean, it's okay for a little while if you're dancing, maybe. I don't know. It's really hard. But there's all kinds of these various different fashion choices and so forth. In China, one of the big things expected among the elite for the females was foot binding. Got it? Lovely. Let us talk about this guy, Zheng He. Anybody watch the video yet? Okay, fine. I may be able to show that. Zheng He was Chinese. Actually, he was Muslim, which is not very common among the Chinese. So I believe he may have been from maybe some of the more western regions of China. Okay? He was an admiral. Whoa! He was an admiral for the Chinese Navy, for the Ming Navy. And in the early 1400s, he set sail to go explore. And you're like, wow, early 1400s? When did Christopher Columbus set sail? Thank you very much. He sailed the ocean blue. It helps to remember that. 1492, and Vasco da Gama was going in the late 1400s and so forth. The Chinese, write this down. The Chinese sent this guy with some ships to go explore. Because they're like, we're China again. We're powerful again. We got it together. We're going to send some ships out. Although, to be honest, write this down. A lot of ships were coming into China. And a lot of different traders from other parts will continually come into China. So is it a priority? For a brief period of Chinese history, they will set sail out into discover the world. The Chinese will build ships. They will put them under the direction of Zheng He, and they will send them out to explore. Well, here's the deal. They set sail out here. Okay, so they get to southern China. Have they already been to southern China? Yeah, they know what's in southern China. They get around here to Southeast Asia. Woo, that's cool. Did they already know that Southeast Asia was there? Yeah. They go around into India. Well, that's cool. But did they already know that India was there? No, it's not like they're going to discover it. They get along to the eastern coast of Africa. And they do bring back some things that are pretty wild. But have they already discovered all those things? I mean, like the Chinese, what kind of ships could they make at that time for him to set sail in? Oh my gosh, look at that. Those are some of the larger vessels in the fleet of hundreds of ships that Zheng He sails on. By contrast, at the bottom, Santa Maria Pinta Anina. Those were Columbus's ships. Much smaller. The Chinese could have, like, woo! If they'd wanted to, do you think China could have built some vessels to, like, sail across the Pacific Ocean or the Atlantic? You know why they didn't? Because what matters most in China is China. China literally means the middle of the earth, the middle kingdom. Everything else outside is barbaric. If they want to trade for our wonderful Chinese goods, porcelain, and so forth, let them come to us. After his big mission, write this down, it was shut off. After 1430, no more big trade, sea voyages. In fact, they destroyed his records. China today is looking back and going, wow, we were pretty amazing. You know, China's going to the moon, and China's doing all kinds of things in space. But at this time, they're like, that's kind of a waste. Because all we'll ever do is establish more trade contacts and let those guys come to us. You know, we need to work on building our wall and fixing our canals and making sure we don't get attacked by the northerners. But it's an amazing thing from history. A lot of people don't know that. This guy right here was the leader of a massive expedition, a huge fleet. China was a big deal in those days. Let me show you this video. What's that? Yeah, we'll get this. Okay, let's get Zheng He. Get part of it. We'll get the rest of it. You guys can watch the rest of it afterwards. Guess what fancy animal they came back with from Africa?
In the 15th century, the world
It was tall,
were dominated
with a
by
funny neck.
Here in the Philippines, pearl divers still come across evidence of their journeys. They find porcelain decorated with images of mythical beasts. One plate shows the Huilin, symbol of good luck. The search for this fabulous creature prompted some of the greatest voyages of discovery. In 1415, the Chinese thought they'd found a real Huilin. It made a guest appearance at a banquet in the Forbidden City.
It has the body of a deer and the tail of an ox and a fleshy boneless horn, with luminous spots like red or purple mist. It walks in a stately fashion, and its every motion observes a rhythm. Its harmonious voice sounds like a bell or a musical tune. Captured in Africa, the Huilin was a giraffe.
The Emperor commissioned expeditions to foreign parts to gather intelligence and demonstrate Chinese superiority to the world.
They were pretty big deal back in those days. And they've gotten back to that spot
They did it by a crushing
nowadays.
display of sea power. The first fleet set out had over 300 ships and nearly 28,000
Got that?
men.
300 ships, over 28,000
This
men.
voyage lasted 2 years, visiting 30 countries around the rim of the Indian Ocean. The Chinese reached as far as Mecca in the north, Zanzibar in the west. It has even been claimed they reached the Southern Ocean and Australia.
You can wipe
The
down.
enterprise was led by an admiral of legendary presence and charisma,
Zheng He.
Zheng He.
He stood 7 feet tall and 5 feet wide.
That's pretty
He
wide.
had swarthy skin as rough as an orange, and his eyes sparkled like light on a fast-moving river.
The emperor chose Zheng He because he was an outsider, a Muslim and a eunuch. In an inward-looking court, he was an imperialist who looked beyond China.
Check out the ships.
Compared with European vessels, Zheng He's treasure junks were giants.
That's some big
They were
ships.
the largest wooden ships ever built. Over 400 feet long and 180 feet wide, they were powered by bamboo sails and 9 masts that could be set to any angle of the wind.
That's an impressive boat.
At the stern, in the compass room, admiral's quarters began.
It's like the Titanic.